My family rented out my bedroom while I was still living in the house. What I found behind the locked door changed everything. I was standing at the top of the stairs when Tyler slammed a box of ornaments onto the living room floor, so hard the bells inside jingled in protest. The house smelled of roasted chicken and cinnamon, the kind of scents that used to mean family gathering, warmth, and a little hope. But he did not even look up at me. He just glared, jaw tight, eyes cold. "Mom, stop wandering around upstairs. Guests do not pay to see some old woman shuffle by." His voice cut through the lights and music like a knife through thin ice. Before I could answer, Brooke marched in, holding a faded quilt from my closet. She tossed it down the steps toward me, as if she were throwing away trash. "This is where you sleep now," she said, flicking her wrist toward the basement door. "The upstairs is for paying humans, not sentimental leftovers." The words hit me harder than the quilt. I gripped the railing, steadying myself. I tried to keep my face calm, even as my chest tightened. Then Tyler delivered the line that finished the moment cleanly, brutally. "You are just an expense with a heartbeat." I felt something inside me settle, not in acceptance, but in resignation. They were no longer even pretending to hide what they felt. I looked at the walls of the home I had built with my husband, the home where Tyler had taken his first steps, broken his first tooth, cried his first heartbreak. And now I was a trespasser in it, a shadow they wanted to erase. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. Tyler had not always spoken to me like this, but the roots of his resentment reached far back, tangled in memories he never understood and pain he never let heal. When he was 17, he stole a friend's truck after drinking too much beer at a bonfire. He nearly hit a utility pole on the county road. I called the police because he would have killed himself or someone else. He spent one night in the station and carried that record like a stone. He blamed me for placing there. "You ruined my life at 17, he said for years. He never blamed the alcohol or the reckless driving or the choices he made. He only blamed the mother who tried to save him. When he was younger, I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. I missed games and recitals, not because I did not care, but because I needed to keep the lights on and food on the table." Tyler later told Brooke she was never there for me, leaving out the part where I packed lunches at dawn and folded uniforms after midnight. When his father died, Tyler tried to quit school to work construction. I told him no. I told him he needed an education, that I would not let grief throw his future away. He twisted that memory too, telling anyone who would listen that I never believed in him, that I stifled his ambition. Every sacrifice I made became, in his retelling, a failure he could pin on me. Brooke absorbed every story Tyler fed her. She came from a wealthier family, people who spent money the way some people breathe air, effortlessly and without shame. She looked at me through that lens, as if poverty had been a choice I stubbornly clung to. One afternoon, she stared at me over a pile of folded laundry and said, "You chose to be poor. Do not make us pay for your choices." From then on, she pushed Tyler harder. Sell the house, get the equity, turn it into a profitable Airbnb lodge. "She is old," Brooke said. "She does not need a whole house. She needs supervision." Supervision. As if I were a toddler or a troublesome tenant. A week before Christmas, Tyler walked into my room holding a screwdriver and a set of unfamiliar keys. He did not even meet my eyes when he said, "We listed it already. It is called the Late Mother's Suite. Gets better clicks." Before I could speak, he unscrewed the old brass doorknob, replaced it with a keypad lock, and shut the door as if sealing a vault. My bedroom, my sanctuary, locked against me. I was ordered downstairs. They led me to the basement like a guest being shown to the worst room in a cheap motel. A metal folding bed leaned against the wall. A single lamp flickered beside it. Brooke dropped the faded quilt onto the mattress. "Do not go wandering," she said. "We have check-ins today." The basement was cold. the kind of cold that settled into my knees and spine like a warning. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to them laughing upstairs, adjusting garlands, practicing their host voices, preparing for guests who would never know that the woman listed as late in their cozy, holiday-themed suite was alive and shivering directly below them. It was almost Christmas. Once, that word meant warmth, light, the softness of my husband's hand on mine. Now it meant something else entirely. I was trimming the wilted ends off the winter roses near the porch when a young man in a red flannel jacket walked up the driveway, pulling a suitcase. He looked friendly, almost shy, the kind of polite traveler who apologized for stepping on your shadow. I expected him to ask about check-in times or where to park. Instead, he stopped short when he saw me. Oh my goodness," he stammered. "I am so sorry for your loss." I straightened slowly. "My loss?" He flushed. "Your son told us this used to be your room, that you passed last winter." For a moment I thought my hearing had finally failed me. I blinked at him, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something rational. But they did not. He swallowed hard, as if trying to gather whatever sympathy he had been rehearsing. He said the room is a memorial, that you were very loved. I managed a faint, brittle smile, the kind a person forms when the world tilts the wrong direction. "Thank you," I murmured, because I did not know what else to do. The young man nodded respectfully and stepped inside, leaving me frozen in the cold air as if someone had carved me out of stone. My son had not only evicted me from my room, he had declared me dead, not metaphorically, not emotionally. On record, in story, in narrative dead. The wind scraped against the siding, carrying the smell of pine and someone's cinnamon latte from down the street. A normal winter day. A normal town. But I stood there with shaking hands, realizing whatever game Tyler was playing had passed a line I did not know existed. That night, after the guests went out to explore the Christmas market, I climbed upstairs silently. The keypad lock blinked red when I touched it. Of course he had changed the code again. But a woman who raised a boy like Tyler learns how to improvise. I retrieved an old bobby pin from my cardigan pocket, the same one I used to fasten my hair on Sundays. I bent it gently, slid it into the lock, and felt the old familiar click. The door eased open. Tyler never bothered installing a real security lock afterward. He believed I was too frail, too broken, too defeated to attempt anything twice. My breath clogged in my chest. My bedroom, my sanctuary, was gone. In its place was something staged and eerie, like a set built for a sentimental ghost movie. A white lace quilt draped across the bed, one I had never owned. Soft golden lamps cast a glow that made the room feel falsely warm. My husband's old dresser had been polished, rearranged, stripped of everything personal. On the far wall, above the headboard, hung a large framed photograph of me from 10 years ago, smiling at a summer barbecue. Below it, in looping cursive, "In loving memory of Katrina Hale, 1945-2022. My knees nearly buckled. Beside the picture sat a brochure printed on thick, creamy paper. I picked it up with trembling fingers. "Welcome to the Vintage Memorial Suite. This room honors our late mother, whose spirit still warms this home." Late, honors, spirit. They had written my obituary for profit. My hand shook as I read the next line. "We created this peaceful space to celebrate the woman who raised us with love and strength." Us? Raised us? Tyler and Brooke had crafted a touching little narrative for the guests, complete with reviews praising their emotional honesty. A hollow ache spread through my chest as I looked around the room that used to hold the story of my life. The corner where my husband read the newspaper on winter mornings was now staged with a wicker chair and a throw pillow embroidered with "Forever in Our Hearts." The window where I used to watch Tyler walk to school was framed by curtains I had never seen before, silky, theatrical, pretending comfort. I touched the dresser top. They had removed my jewelry box, my letters, even the indentation my wedding ring once left on the wood. It was a room for a woman who no longer existed, and according to Tyler's listing, that woman was me. I felt the sting of tears, but refused to let them fall. Crying would give them power. Crying would make this feel final, as if I had agreed to the death they assigned me. Instead, I inhaled slowly, letting the familiar scent of the hallway drift in the faint trace of cedar from the rafters, the winter breeze that always sneaked through the old glass panes, the memory of Christmas mornings when my husband lit a tiny fire in the grate so Tyler would wake to warmth. This room had been built with real lives, not curated stories. My husband and I had painted the walls ourselves the year after he came home from surgery. Each slow stroke a promise that we were still here, still fighting. We saved money for the bed frame, tightened the screws together, argued over the right place for the lamp, laughed when the dog left muddy prints across the new rug. And now all of that had been erased, overwritten by a narrative designed to sell a seasonal experience. A fake tragedy, wrapped in pine garlands and soft lighting. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bed, even if they tried to rename it, and for the first time since this nightmare began, anger rose in me like a living thing. Not hot and explosive, but steady, controlled, perfectly cold. Tyler and Brooke had not simply taken my room. They had taken my existence, folded it into a pretty brochure, and sold it to strangers. And as I sat there, in the dim glow of my own fake memorial, a quiet thought surfaced in my mind, sharp enough to cut steel. If they believed I was dead, then they would never see what I did next coming. I first met him when I was sweeping pine needles off the front porch, trying to stay invisible, the way Tyler preferred me to be when guests were around. The Airbnb door opened, and a tall man in a winter coat stepped out, blinking at the cold Montana air. He looked nothing like the usual skiers or holiday couples Brooke bragged about attracting. He moved with the quiet alertness of someone who observed before speaking. He glanced at me, then glanced again longer this time. His eyes narrowed just slightly, not with suspicion, but with recognition. "You live here?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Downstairs." He hesitated, shifting the strap of his duffel on his shoulder. "Forgive me if this sounds strange, but you look very much like the woman in the memorial photo upstairs." My breath hitched. "That is because it is me." His eyebrows drew together. "But the listing says—" "I know what it says," I murmured. For a few moments we just stood there, the winter wind threading between us. Then he exhaled gently, as if choosing every word with care. "My name is Rowan. Rowan Pierce." He lowered his voice. "I am a physician and a medical ethics instructor at Montana State. I do not usually get involved in family matters, but has anyone reported you deceased?" The question felt like ice sliding down my spine. "I thought they only made up a story for the guests," I whispered. "Are you saying—" "I am saying," he interrupted gently, "that something about that certificate on the nightstand looks wrong to me. I have seen hundreds of death documents in my life. That one is unsettling." My knees weakened. I motioned for him to follow me around the side of the house where Tyler could not see us from the kitchen window. Rowan opened his phone and pulled up a photo he had taken for his own confusion there. On the screen was a scan taped inside the Airbnb welcome binder, a spiritual memorial certificate, signed by Pastor Henry, stamped with an imitation seal, dated exactly 1 year prior. I stared so hard my eyes burned. They held a memorial for me, while I was downstairs in the basement. Rowan looked genuinely pained. "It appears they staged one. This type of certificate is usually used informally during church vigils or symbolic remembrance gatherings. But this one has details formatted like a real death record. Full name, birth year, date of passing, even a notation about next of kin handling affairs." My heart thudded against my ribs. "Rowan," I whispered, "why would anyone go through that much trouble?" "Because," he said calmly, "a spiritual certificate with this level of detail could very easily be adapted or used as a template for something more official." The air seemed to thin around me. My hands shook so hard I had to tuck them into my sleeves. At that moment I felt the full weight of what Tyler and Brooke might be building behind my back. I found Tyler in the kitchen packing boxes of holiday cookies for the new guests. I stepped inside without knocking, You held a memorial for me, I said quietly, while I was alive, downstairs, in that freezing basement. He spun around, jaw clenched. You were never really alive for me. Not as a mother. This is just catching up. It felt like a slap I had been expecting for years. Brooke sauntered in, sipping cocoa. Calm down, Katrina. People pay more when there is a tragic story. It is marketing, not murder. I stared at her. You put my name on a certificate. You staged a service. She shrugged, flattered. They wanted me flattered for being buried alive in my own home. You think this is harmless? I asked, my voice trembling. Pretending I am dead? Tyler leaned close, lowering his voice into something cold and vicious. You should be thanking us. You were taking up space without paying rent. Now, at least your absence is profitable. I stepped back, as if the words carried weight. Behind us, Rowan cleared his throat. Tyler, he said formally. May I ask why Pastor Henry signed something resembling a death certificate? This document is not consistent with casual remembrance. It mirrors the layout of an actual county record. Tyler's face drained of color. Brooke shot him a sharp look. Ty, what did you tell Pastor Henry? I thought it was just symbolism, Rowan continued, gentler but firm. The formatting concerns me. Someone could use this as the basis for forging an official declaration of death. Silence gripped the room. Tyler's jaw twitched. You need to leave, he snapped at Rowan. This is family business. But I saw the panic flicker behind his eyes, because Rowan was right. This was not just a lie to Airbnb guests. This was paperwork, careful, deliberate paperwork. And paperwork is never created without a larger goal, a goal that required me, on paper, to no longer exist. Rowan did not bring it up again that night. He simply asked permission to look into a few things, as he put it, with the polite caution of a man who knew he was stepping into a family minefield. I nodded, because fear had a way of stripping pride from a woman, and Rowan had the kind of integrity you can sense even in silence. By the next morning, he looked different, more serious, more certain. When he knocked on the basement door, I felt my heartbeat quicken. Katrina, he said quietly, may I come in? I gestured him inside. He held a small folder. The edges curled as if he had been gripping it too tightly. He sat across from me on the metal folding chair Tyler had shoved into my room. Exhaling before he spoke, I checked the county's public records, he began. Not because I wanted to intrude, but because I needed to understand whether the certificate upstairs had been used for anything official. My chest tightened. The first page made my breath stop. Property tax adjustment. Inherited home exemption. Status. Approved. Deceased owner. Katrina Hale. Successor. Tyler Hale. My eyes blurred. Inherited, I whispered. Deceased owner. The words felt heavier than any insult Tyler had ever thrown at me. I am so sorry, Rowan murmured. Tyler filed for a tax exemption reserved for homes inherited from the recently deceased. It lowers the annual property tax by almost half. I stared at the page, unable to speak. Tyler had buried me not only in his marketing story, not only in the Airbnb listing, but in the county's eyes as well. As far as the government was concerned, I was gone. Rowan waited, then pulled out a second form. And this, he said, is a grant application. From the state's housing improvement program. I scanned the text. Inherited home renovation grant $40,000. Applicant, Tyler Hale. Purpose. Restoration, after owner's passing. My hands went numb. $40,000. He nodded. Approved. Funds pending inspection. A hollow disbelief settled in my bones. They used my death, I whispered. Not just for a story. Not just for guests. They used it to get money from the state. Rowan's expression held a mix of compassion and barely contained anger. This is a serious level of fraud, Katrina. Very serious. I felt my pulse thudding in my ears. He killed me for a tax cut, I said weakly. My own son. When I finally went upstairs, Tyler and Brooke were in the kitchen, assembling gift baskets for the Christmas guests. I set the papers on the counter. They froze. "Explain," I said, my voice low, quivering. Tyler rolled his eyes. First habit, reflex, disrespect polished over decades. "Oh, that? It is just paperwork. Everyone does it. It helps with the cost of maintenance." "That paperwork only applies to a home inherited from a dead person," I said. "A dead person, Tyler." "Me." He shrugged like he was discussing weather. "Well, you have been dead to me since 17 when you wrecked my future and called the cops on your own son." I blinked. "I called the cops because you were drunk and behind the wheel. I was trying to save your life." His mouth twisted. "You saved nothing. You left me with a record, and that record followed me into every job interview I ever went to. So yes, oh me, Mom. I'm just finally collecting." Each word sliced deeper than the last. Brooke stepped in, chin high, attitude sharp. "The state has plenty of money. Katrina, you were sitting on this house doing nothing for decades. We are the ones improving it, increasing its value, making it useful. You should be thanking us." "Thanking you," I murmured. "For forging my death." Brooke smirked. "You always wanted Tyler to have a better life, right? Well, this is it. Consider it a delayed contribution." I felt something inside me break, not loudly, but quietly, like the snap of frozen branches outside in the winter wind. "You have taken my room," I said. "My dignity, my story. And now the state believes I am gone." Tyler shrugged. "Be grateful we didn't put you somewhere worse. The basement is more than you deserve." Generous. A basement in my own home. I turned to leave, but as I stepped into the hallway, I heard Brooke's voice behind me, low, quick, nervous. "Yes, the policy is active." She whispered into her phone. "No, she does not know. We just need to wait for the holidays to be over. Accidental, death, policy." My legs nearly gave out. There is a kind of fear no elderly woman should ever feel in her own house, the fear that the people she once fed, clothed, raised, and prayed for are now calculating the price of her final breath. I backed away from the door before she noticed me. Whatever they had planned next, I understood now. It was not just fraud. They were waiting for me to disappear, for real. Christmas Eve used to mean warmth in this house. My husband's hands carving the roast. My son hanging crooked ornaments and pretending they were straight. My own laughter filling the corners like a second set of lights. But that night, as I sat on the basement cot Tyler had thrown together, all those memories felt like ghosts pressed against the walls. Upstairs, the celebration throbbed through the floorboards. Guests clinked glasses. Someone laughed too loudly. A group of Airbnb holiday renters sang along to Jingle Bell Rock while Brooke directed them like a hostess at a resort. I could smell cinnamon cider drifting through the vents, sweet and taunting. Every note of cheerful music made my chest feel tighter, as if my heart was trying to shrink itself to avoid breaking. Down here, the air was cold enough to sting my fingertips. The only light came from a small lamp missing its shade, casting uneven shadows across the cement walls. I pulled the thin blanket closer around my shoulders and tried to stop my hands from shaking. Silent Night drifted faintly through the ducts, slow and tender, a song meant for peace. In the basement, it sounded like a lullaby for someone waiting to disappear. I told myself not to cry. Tears froze faster in basements. I had almost drifted into the numb quiet that comes right before sleep when I heard the soft creak of the stairs. A small shadow appeared in the doorway. "Grandma?" Mason whispered. My heart softened instantly. He tiptoed toward me, clutching a cookie shaped like a reindeer and a little plastic cup filled with milk. Upstairs, Brooke was busy entertaining guests while Tyler was outside hanging more lights, too distracted to notice his son slipping away. "I brought you this," he said, holding it out with both hands, earnest and careful. "I saved you the one with the chocolate nose." I almost cried just from that. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said softly, taking it from him. Why are you not upstairs? He leaned closer as if sharing a secret. Dad said you won't be here next Christmas. My breath caught. He said that? Mason nodded with the innocent certainty only a child can have. He said the house will finally be ours, that we won't have to pretend anymore. I forced my voice to stay calm. Pretend what, honey? That you're gone, he said matter-of-factly. He told Aunt Nicole yesterday that you're only gone on paper for now, but soon it'll be real and everything can be official. The room tilted for a moment. I gripped the edge of the cot, trying not to show fear. Mason, I whispered, did your dad say what he meant? He shrugged. Just that you make things complicated. But when people go away forever, grown-ups don't have to fill out so many forms. I touched his cheek gently. He smiled, unaware of the chill running through my bones. Children repeat what they hear. They do not sanitize. They do not interpret. They simply tell the truth. Thank you for telling me, I said, kissing his forehead. You're a good boy, he beamed, then scampered back upstairs. As soon as he left, I turned off the lamp and sat still, listening carefully. If Mason could wander down here unnoticed, maybe voices could wander down too. The house settled. Then I heard it, the murmur of conversation drifting through the metal air duct near the ceiling. Tyler's voice first, sharp and impatient. Did you talk to the county office? They said everything will finalize after the holiday break. Yes, Brooke replied. Grant approved. Tax reduction approved. Listings full until March. After New Year, this place is officially ours. My heartbeat pounded so loudly I was afraid it would drown out their voices. Tyler again. And once the title transfer is locked, we move her. Nursing home, if she cooperates. If not, well, she is already dead on paper. A long silence followed. I could hear glasses clink. Brooke's heels tapping lightly across the kitchen tile. Then Brooke added, quieter, colder. The insurance guy said the accidental death policy is active. He said timing matters. You know that. It will work, Tyler said. Just give it a few days. After the holidays, no one will question anything. My breath froze in my throat. They were not just planning to remove me. They were preparing for the day I died, and they were discussing it like ordering takeout. Brooke's voice sharpened. She is old, Tyler. Old and fragile. Sometimes things just happen around the elderly. And accidents, Tyler said, are believable. I pressed my palm over my mouth to keep from making a sound. The basement suddenly felt like a bunker, a hiding place for someone who had already been sentenced. When their footsteps faded upstairs, I let the silence settle. Something shifted inside me, not panic, not fear, but a clarity so sharp it felt like a blade. They had buried me in paperwork, in lies, in government forms. They had carved a gravestone with my name on it and hung it in my own bedroom. But I was still breathing. And breath is power. I stood slowly, pushing the blanket away. The cold floor steadied me. Every bone in my body ached, but not from age, from betrayal. If they were willing to erase me on paper, then I needed someone who dealt in truth. Rowan Pierce, the man who had recognized the wrongness before I did, the one person who had seen the cracks in the story and cared enough to look deeper. I whispered into the dim basement air. If they've already buried me, then it's time I let the truth dig them up. This Christmas would not end the way Tyler and Brooke planned, not while I was still alive. I did not sleep that night. The basement felt colder than ever, and the words I had heard through the vents replayed in my mind like a warning I could not escape. By morning, my fingers were stiff, my joints aching, but my mind had never been clearer. Before sunrise, I slipped outside to meet Rowan where we had agreed. The frost under my shoes cracked loudly, but the world was still too asleep to notice. Rowan looked relieved when he saw me. You should not stay in that house much longer, he said quietly. I sent everything to someone who can help. Someone? I asked. Agent Caroline Brooks, he said. State fraud and elder protection. She's very Very good. I did not know it then, but that woman would become the storm that shook the entire foundation of my son's lies. Later, when Caroline herself told me the story, she described the moment Rowan's email arrived. She had been working late, half listening to holiday music on her radio when the files dropped into her inbox. A scanned $40,000 renovation grant. A tax reduction form that listed me as dead. Screenshots of insurance information Rowan had managed to pull from a database, and a picture of that grotesque memorial certificate. She told me she paused with her hand on her coffee mug, staring at the words, "In loving memory of Katrina Hale, 19452022. I remember thinking, she said, if this woman is really dead, she aged beautifully in that Airbnb photo. She enlarged the picture Rowan sent me standing in the yard, taken by the guest I had spoken to. Alive, awake, breathing. Caroline said that was the moment she knew something was very wrong. She did what investigators do first, checked the system. There, she found a pending death record with my name, my birthday, and a date from last winter. The status read, awaiting verification. But someone had already uploaded the template. Someone wanted it ready. Caroline told me she leaned back in her chair and whispered to herself, who benefits from her death? It was the same question my own heart had been screaming at me in the dark basement. Then she saw the insurance information. 2 years earlier, Tyler had purchased an accidental death policy in my name. Medium coverage at first, then higher the next year. And this year, just 2 months ago, he had increased it again. She said that part made her stomach turn. No one increases a parent's accidental death policy in tidy little increments unless they're planning something, she told me. Insurance companies know that. Investigators know that. Criminals never think we do. What Caroline found next, she found by accident. She typed late mother's sweet Montana Airbnb into her search bar, curious how far their story had spread. That was when she stumbled onto a TikTok video with nearly 600,000 views. A pair of travel vloggers had stayed in my room. They had filmed a tour of the space, giggling at the vintage quilts, zooming in on the memorial brochure, making jokes about ghost moms. But the loudest part wasn't the TikTok creators at all. It was the background audio. Tyler's voice. Clear as day. He was laughing with a friend near the hallway, not realizing he was being recorded. Paperwork already says she's dead, he bragged. State just hasn't caught up yet. Caroline replayed that part 7 times. She told me she leaned so close to her monitor she could see the reflection of the screen in her own glasses. That sentence, she said, was confession. Not confusion, not misunderstanding. Confession. TikTok had captured his arrogance better than any investigator could. Caroline went straight to my neighborhood and spoke with Mrs. Callahan, the neighbor who'd watched everything unravel. She told Caroline how I carried laundry to the basement under Tyler's glare, how my bedroom stayed dark, how shouting echoed late at night, and how I once shivered outside without a coat because he forgot me. Caroline told me. She said you looked like someone slowly fading out of your own home. Mrs. Callahan also confirmed something else, something darker. One night, she heard Brooke joke on the phone that the old woman is basically gone already, followed by the words that made Caroline's jaw clench. Once the paperwork clears, everything will run smoother. That was enough to elevate the case from suspicious to severe, from fraud to elder abuse, from financial manipulation to potential life-threatening intent. When Caroline met me for the first time, she walked into Rowan's clinic wearing a dark wool coat, her badge tucked discreetly into her pocket. She had a calm face, the kind that made people confess without realizing they were confessing. Katrina, she said gently, taking my hands, you are not safe in that house, and you are not imagining any of this. Her voice was steady, confident, without hesitation. I have seen fraud. I have seen greed. I have seen manipulation, she continued. But what your son and daughter-in-law are doing, planning your death on paper and potentially in life, is criminal. Deeply criminal. I swallowed hard. I had prepared myself for heartbreak, betrayal, humiliation. but not for the word criminal. Caroline squeezed my hand. You surviving this long might be the only reason they have not gone further. Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed strong. I am going to protect you now, she said, and I am going to tear their scheme apart, piece by piece. That moment I felt something I had not felt in months. Safety. Not because the danger had passed, but because someone finally believed me. Someone with power. Someone with knowledge. Someone who was ready to fight. Caroline stood, tucking papers back into her folder. Now, she said, let us begin. And for the first time since they tried to bury me, I felt my life rising back to the surface. The morning of December 26th felt like the other's cold concrete under my feet, muffled voices upstairs. That familiar tightness in my chest until a strange stillness settled over the house. I sensed it before the knock came. It was not a neighbor or an Airbnb guest. It was firm, official, the kind that made the walls listen. By the time I reached the stairs, the door was open, and Brooke's too cheerful voice tried to mask her panic. Oh, you must be the cleaning crew. Checkout was supposed to be. No. A woman cut her off, calm but sharp. We are not here to clean anything. I recognized that voice instantly. Caroline. I climbed the stairs, holding the railing with one hand, bracing myself. When I stepped into the hallway, the scene before me looked unreal. Caroline in her long dark coat, two uniformed police officers, a man with an IRS badge, another from Social Security, and a representative from an insurance company. And behind them, a young couple with suitcases, the Airbnb guests standing frozen in the doorway, as shocked as I was. Tyler rushed forward, trying to recover his usual performance. Is there a problem? My mother has dementia. I handle all her affairs. Anything you need, I can explain. Caroline did not look at him. She looked at me. Mrs. Katrina Hale, she said. Would you mind stepping into the living room so we can ask you a few questions? Brooke sputtered. She gets confused easily. Maybe ask me instead. Caroline held up a hand. We will be determining that ourselves. They led me to the couch. Tyler hovered behind me like a vulture in human skin. Caroline sat across from me, her notebook open. Katrina, she said softly, please state your full legal name. Katrina May Hale. Date of birth, April 12, 1945. Current address, I gave the exact street, city, and zip code without hesitation. Caroline turned her head, slowly, deliberately, toward Tyler. Her voice dropped an octave. Strange. Deceased people usually do not answer this well. The air cracked. Brooke stopped breathing. Tyler's face drained of color so quickly I thought he might faint. Before he could open his mouth, the officer from Social Security stepped forward and handed Caroline a folder. She opened it and pulled out the first sheet. Mrs. Hale, she said, this is a property tax reduction form. She held it up so the room could see. It lists your home as inherited real estate from a deceased owner. The deceased owner is you. She placed it on the coffee table like a piece of rotting fruit. This, she continued, pulling out another, is a state renovation grant application. $40,000. Signed and submitted by your son, Mr. Tyler Hale. The IRS agent added, approved based on fraudulent death status. Another sheet appeared. The life insurance policy. Purchased 2 years ago, said the insurance investigator. Coverage increased 3 times. Beneficiary, Tyler Hale. I felt Tyler stiffen behind me, his breath turning jagged. Caroline lifted her phone next. And this is a TikTok video posted by a guest staying here. Listen carefully. She pressed play. The now familiar voice, my son's voice, echoed through the living room. Paperwork already says she's dead. State just hasn't caught up yet. The guests in the doorway gasped. One of the police officers exhaled sharply. Brooke covered her mouth with her hand like she was trying to keep her soul from falling out. Caroline locked eyes with Tyler. Would you like to explain why you told multiple people, including strangers online, that your living mother was dead? Tyler's voice cracked. It was a joke. A misunderstanding. She gets confused. No, Caroline snapped. You get confused. Specifically about which crimes carry prison time. She waved an officer forward, then looked toward the front door. Pastor Henry, please step inside. The old pastor shuffled in, guilt written across his face. Caroline asked him one question. Did you sign a memorial certificate for Mrs. Hale? Pastor Henry's voice trembled. I thought it was symbolic. Tyler said she couldn't climb stairs anymore, that the family wanted closure. He told me you wanted a quiet living memorial, something to help you prepare spiritually. I had no reason to doubt him. Did you notarize anything resembling an official death record? He shook his head violently. No, that part Tyler used the template without my consent. Caroline nodded toward the officers. Thank you, Pastor. Then she turned back to Tyler. Mr. Hale, you are under investigation for fraud, forgery, elder abuse, insurance fraud, tax evasion, and attempted misrepresentation of a death record. Please stand. Tyler stumbled backward. Wait, no. Brooke, say something. Tell them, this was your idea too. Brooke shot him, a look of pure betrayal. Do not you dare drag me into this. I told you it was risky. I told you not to push it this far. Caroline raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Hale, she said sharply, you signed the grant paperwork? You accepted the tax benefits. You also encouraged the fake memorial narrative to Airbnb guests. You are being charged as an accomplice. Brooke's mouth opened in outrage, but her words were swallowed by the click of metal. The officers cuffed her first. She started sobbing, demanding a lawyer. Tyler lunged forward when they reached for him. I did this for my family. For Mason. Tell them, Mason. Tell them I was trying to do the right thing. His voice cracked into something feral, desperate, unhinged. From the staircase, I saw Mason small, trembling, watching everything with eyes that had seen too much for his age. Tyler reached toward him, hands cuffed, pleading, Buddy, tell them Dad did this for us. Mason looked at me, then at him. His lips pressed together in a thin, brave line. No, Dad, he whispered. Grandma never lied to me. The room froze. Tyler's knees buckled a little, his breath hitched, his face twisted in disbelief. Wounded not by the law but by the truth spoken by his own child. I opened my arms then, and Mason ran into them like a bird escaping a storm. I held him against my chest, his cheek pressed to my shoulder. For the first time in months, I felt warmth spread through my ribs, warmth that belonged to love, not fear. I brushed his hair gently and said, softly but clearly so everyone could hear, this is what truth looks like, Mason. It does not need paperwork. Caroline nodded at the officers. Take them. The cuffs clicked. Tyler shouted my name, my real name, the one he had tried to erase on paper, but I did not answer. The police led him out the door, Brooke behind him, Pastor Henry escorted separately for questioning. As the cars pulled away, sirens silent but lights flashing, the house finally felt like mine again, not because they were gone, but because I was no longer buried. When the squad cars disappeared down the snowy road and the last official stepped off my porch, I stood alone in a house that had held more secrets than laughter. The silence felt foreign, no stomping footsteps above me, no Brooke barking demands, no Tyler slamming doors as though the world existed to absorb his anger. Only the heater's soft hum and the faint jingle of an ornament trembling on the Christmas tree remained. Caroline told me I should sit, but I refused. I had spent too long sitting, too long shrinking in a basement, like an artifact from a life my son wanted to monetize. I needed to stand, to breathe, to feel the frost inside me finally crack. Within 48 hours, the state froze the property. Within a week, every agency involved confirmed what Caroline already knew. Every valid signature belonged to me. I had always been the legal owner. I had simply been erased on paper so they could profit. The remaining grant funds were ordered to be repaid. The insurance company canceled the accidental death policy and launched its own investigation. The IRS flagged the fraudulent filings. Social Security attached elder exploitation charges. One by one, Every institution Tyler had manipulated turned toward him with consequences he never imagined. For the first time in months, justice was not a fantasy. It was my name spelled correctly. It was the removal of the lock Tyler had installed on my bedroom door. It was the quiet reclaiming of my own existence. But the house no longer felt like a home. When I walked upstairs and stood in the doorway of the room where my marriage and memories once lived, the walls felt bruised by lies. I could reclaim the space, but not the peace. So I made the only decision that made sense. I sold the house. Not out of anger, though I had earned the right to plenty, but because a house is meant to hold a life, not a burial. And mine had been buried long enough. With the money, I bought a small cabin near the mountains. Not a tourist getaway, but a quiet place tucked beside a river, where pine trees whispered at night and the wind sounded like an old friend instead of a warning. It was simple and honest. I hung wind chimes by the window, set a bird feeder by the door, and slept with the curtains open so the moonlight could spill across my blankets. The first snow softened the world instead of stinging it. I joined a women's group, widows, grandmothers, retired teachers, even a former truck driver who baked like an angel. We did slow yoga, shared food, and talked about wounds that never bled but shaped us anyway. On Christmas Eve, I hung warm lights across my porch, made real cocoa with cream and cinnamon, and sat in my rocking chair watching the snow fall. For the first time in decades, the holiday felt like mine. No raised voices, no locked doors, no basement shadows, just a quiet old woman, unburied, holding a cup of warmth in hands that had survived colder things. In the weeks that followed, I worked with my attorney to create a fund supporting older adults exploited by their children. Another portion went to helping Montana seniors fight housing fraud, coerced signatures, fake transfers, predatory relatives, and one last portion funded free legal consultations at the community center. Rowan visited with fresh bread and research updates. Caroline came too, sometimes in uniform, sometimes in winter jeans. They were no longer just rescuers. They were the kind of family life should have given me. As for Mason, he came to visit quietly with a relative, his small hands wrapped around a tin of cookies. He hugged me tight, and for the first time I felt hope that one branch of the family tree might still grow straight. When I told him he was always welcome in my home, he whispered, "Dad said you were gone, but you weren't." I cupped his cheek gently. "No, sweetheart," I said. "I was here the whole time. They just tried to erase me." He nodded slowly, as if piecing together a truth he had been denied. And that night, after he left, I stood on my porch again and let the cold air fill my lungs. The stars were bright, sharp, almost defiant. I thought of the false certificates, the staged memorial, the forged signatures. I thought of the basement. I thought of the door they locked to sell the story of my death. And I whispered to the wind, not in anger but in truth. They declared me dead on paper so they could own my house. But when the truth came out, it was their future that got buried. Then I smiled, closed my eyes, and let the night settle gently around me. I did not come back from the dead, I said to the quiet. I simply outlived their lies. My dears, thank you for staying with me through every cold night in that basement, every whisper behind locked doors, and every step I took back into the light. These stories are heavy, but they matter because somewhere out there, another grandmother is being silenced, dismissed, or written out of her own life. And she needs to know she is not alone. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength, if you felt that spark of justice warming your chest again, then I would love for you to stay with our little family here. Hit that subscribe button and join us at Grandma True Stories, where we give voice to the women the world tried to quiet, and where every story lifts another grandmother out of the shadows. Thank you, my loves, for listening. Until the next story, take gentle care of your heart and never let anyone write you out of your own life.